Hello, hello, everyone.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening,
Reverend Elvia.
and Reverend Peter.
And you have no idea how much time Peter spent setting this guy up, positioning him.
Well, he wants to see the world, and he wants to see you.
This would be Oracle Bunny. Some of you know him.
Some of you may picture him waving his little paw.
Welcome to Sunday Morning Grace for March 2022. We are very honored to have you joining us here today. And the topic that we're talking about this month is aligning with your guidance and really tuning into your true north and knowing what is right for you moment to moment. So that's the topic all month that you're going to be hearing from our various ministers who are on deck. And today we're going to be talking about a very specific part of alignment and knowing that your guidance is right, your intuition is clear. And this guy is extra excited because, well...
We're going to be talking about human design.
Yeah, pretty much the whole time. So...
Human design, all the time.
Yeah, that's kind of his tagline. And for good reason, because human design, for those of you who don't know about human design, it's similar to astrology. So it's taking your birth information and looking at a map of your energetic expression. And through that map, you can learn how to better utilize the energy you were born with. Did I say that okay?
Absolutely. I mean, one of my big mantras when I'm coaching or giving somebody a reading is, my goal is to give you information to maximize your life experience. So anytime you're going to invest time, money, materials, effort, commitment, you want to get the most out of it. And you want it to be for you, not for the world or not for everybody else. Because if it's for you, then you'll be in the divine alignment that we're talking about today.
Yeah. You know, I think so many people are in this almost desperate space of, how do I help? How do I do my part? How do I contribute to positive change and positive evolution? And I think that what we're talking about here today very much helps to answer that question.
Absolutely. And being in that frantic space or that frantic feeling, that frantic energy is not necessarily the best use of your energy. And so we're going to address that as we go through the 4 points that we have for you today.
4. So our first point actually is honoring what's going on in the world right now, from the context of, and even before sort of this escalation of violence and what's happening in Ukraine, is that, you know, we have so many things that distract us and pull us away from the moment, from the here, from the now, from the, what is really important. And not that those other things aren't important, but we can't do what we're here to do to contribute to the solution unless we're very present with what we're here to do in this moment. So, the first point is that we're going to be talking about the response
chain, and responding.
Yeah. And so response chain is actually a term coined by Peter. We haven't heard it anyplace else. And I think as I've sat with it over time and used it for myself, it's been huge. So actually, why don't you explain what the response chain is before we go further?
So first, let me sort of set the foundation. A lot of times in human design, responding is what generators do. 70% of the population, generators and manifesting generators, and that's a very high-level type. But I believe the other 3 types, the projectors, the manifestors, and the reflectors, they're all going to respond. Now, their mechanism is a bit different. The generators and manifesting generators, their response is coming more from the gut feeling, the sacral center. But those other types are also responding. A manifestor, for example, is responding to a particular opportunity or something they see. But their mechanism to decide that's going to be different. But in the context of today's discussion, we're going to bring it all back to using your intuition to help clarify what that response should be.
In the moment.
In the moment. So with that said, one of the things that occurred to me early on in my studies with human design is that response is I think often looked at as, you have an opportunity or you have a situation and you make a decision. But if you really step back and break it down into a chain of responses, then you can have better outcomes. Simple example. Elvia asks me, do you want tea? Well, I can say yes. So in this case, there's one step in the chain. It's just tea, yes. But if I'm following my intuition, maybe I don't feel like the tea that I have every day. And so I say, well, I don't want the regular tea. What other types of tea do we have? And she can give me those, green and mint and other types. And again, I could say, okay, mint. Or I could again have, well, what kind of green tea do we have? So as you can see, you're progressing. And each piece of information, you have an opportunity to respond, yes, give me that, or yes, I will do that, or ask another question, or, you know what, I don't want tea. Now that I think about it, now that I tune in, tea's been upsetting my stomach. So by following the response chain, you can end up with better results. You can end up maybe not committing to something that initially, hey, that felt right, but you really didn't sink all the way into it.
Yeah. I love that. And as you're talking, I'm thinking about how I think we do these things much more explicitly when we're buying a car, buying a house, or changing jobs. Like for the bigger decisions, we're more tuned into the, first you decide that you might need a new car because the old one isn't doing, or your daughter took it from you. Truth. First you decide you need a new car, and then you're like, well, maybe, what kind? Let me go look. And so there's this progression. But I think, kind of bringing that to the smaller decisions like tea, you find yourself more present in the moment, because it brings you into this space of knowing the yes. And that's what following your guidance is 100% about, is knowing the yes in this moment.
Because if it's not yes, it's
right.
no. Even if it's, it almost feels right, it's still no. Not in this moment.
To your tea example, you could be like, well, maybe I want some tea. Then there's not enough information,
And maybe half an hour later, it's like, a cup of tea would be really good right now.
Exactly. So again, back to point number one, is that there's so much in our world right now that is asking for our attention, that's demanding our attention, and our hearts are pulled, to want to help. And the way that we can help best is by being very in tune with what we're here to do in this moment. We've been talking about recording this video all week, and the right time wasn't until today, which is Friday. Right. So, point number two.
Point number two is intuition really comes in different speeds. Sometimes you just know. And again, going back to point one, in that case, the response chain may be very short. But other times it kind of dribs and drabs, just like you need to do something about it. We know we needed to film this video, but each day we would check in. It's like, no, it doesn't feel right for one or the other. One day Elvia was tired. One day I didn't sleep very well. And, one day we were busy. So anyway, when you know.
Right. And that's a hallmark of the yes, is that There's just this, and going back to the 70% that have a sacral motor, it's a is a yes, and an is a no. And to learn more about human design, by the way, there's all kinds of Jamila Jamie, Reverend Jamie, is big on human design as well, and you can just post on the DOSR Facebook group and ask for her. I don't actually know her website off the top of my head. His is loveyourhumandesign.com, and if you don't know about it, it's a pretty cool paradigm. But if you're following your sacral, your moment to moment, you're in your yes. And for the other 30%, there's strategies for knowing that you're in your yes for them as well. It's just different.
Absolutely.
So,
are we ready for 3?
I think we are ready for 3. So, related to point number 2 with the different speeds, in terms of, there's also the clarity, and we've sort of touched on it already, but there are things that can impact the clarity in the moment. One of those things is emotions, and human design certainly talks about that. There is just not all the pieces are in place. It's just not divine timing, like we were talking about with the video and recording this. We knew it was coming, but the yes wasn't there yet. And I think a lot of times people want to push. I think it's part of our culture. Push, get her done. It's in the plan. It was in the plan to do it on Tuesday or whatever the plan was. And, this is about letting go of that stuff that's up here about the plan and just recognizing that divine alignment, divine timing is the answer. Because of emotions, because all the pieces aren't lined up, because it's just not right timing until it is.
And being in the flow. And Elvia mentioned emotions, but, take a couple of examples that we've used. The decision for T and the decision about getting a car. The decision of T is on a mental plane is much simpler. The decision about a car, there's all these factors, it's like what kind of car, what price range, what color, what features do you want to have. All of those may take some time from the mental plane that you've got to sort of sort through. What are my needs? Emotionally, what are my wants? Identity, do I identify with that car? Does it need to be electric because I'm very environmentally conscious? All those things can affect the time and the timing.
Yeah. And it's funny because you're reminding me the process of my getting a second car because it was COVID. It was extraordinary. It is extraordinary circumstances. And our daughter has been living in Philadelphia and didn't have a car and was quarantining and was alone. And Peter had gone down to bring her back. And this was like back in May 2020. So back close to the start. And she wanted to go back, when the riots started happening in, I think that was late May, early June. Anyway, so she took my car because it was easier than him driving back. And then it just started to drag out, and we at that time really only needed one car. So time went on and she continued to have my car. And it didn't come back. And so, the conversation about getting a second car didn't really happen until we were like a year later.
Well, and because of the pandemic, we didn't really need a second car. But
right.
Then as we got vaccinated and we started to come out of it, then both Elvia and I had needs at the same time, the same day, where, it was probably doable, but it would have been really inconvenient and potentially kept us out of the flow of what we were supposed to be doing.
And our daughter would never buy a car for herself. So, as parents, we're like, we want her to have access to be able to, easily go to her doctor's appointments and not take an Uber and all these things and put herself at risk. So anyway, rambling a little bit with that, but there were a lot of divine timing was a very important part of that whole thing. I think, of course, God knew all along that we were going to be getting a second car, but it took a while for us to catch up.
And when it happened, we walked in, we were there, we took a test drive.
Got the same kind of car because I loved it.
2 hours later, paperwork signed. 2 days later, she picks up the car, just like that. Just when you allow the timing, allow the flow, because a lot of times if we don't, we're fighting upstream. It feels like we're, salmon. And it's like there's this obstacle and that obstacle. Well, if you let divine timing, then it can go smoother. Not that you're not going to experience that on other occasions, but
I still remember the morning that it was a Saturday morning, and I picked the Chariot card. And I went upstairs. I hadn't even thought about it before. And I went upstairs to Peter and I said, I think I need to get my own car. And he said, yeah. My brother's like, well, of course you do. Like everybody else knew. Anyway.
But it had to be the right time for her.
It had to be the right time.
It's her car.
Yeah. Right. So our daughter's safe. I have a car. All's good. Anyway.
Just to touch on that last time, though. So others of us could have said, you really need to get a car, and we try to do that because we want to help people, right? All of us kind of try to do that. Well, that's not necessarily help if they're not at that place, because then they're entering into potentially feeling forced or not in their flow. They're not at their true yes. So in a way, while we're trying to help them, we're potentially taking away their flow, their power.
Right. So number 4, our last point here, why this is so important.
So this, for me, this really comes from my human design teacher, Karen Curry, who's now Karen Parker. And she used to talk about that and this came from a song, Peter, Paul, and Mary, I believe, that we're all God's children in the choir. I hope I didn't butcher the title too badly, but the point being that we all have a role. And I was thinking about this actually while we were talking. Particularly think about an a cappella group, and they have like the guy that does the rhythms, the drums, and the all those different sounds, beatbox, I think it's called, but again, I'm not that knowledgeable on it. But so they've got that, and then they at different times they have the people that are doing the ooh and the ah, and sort of carrying the melody, and then they have the vocalists. Now, if we all don't play our part, then, and we're an a cappella choir, just imagine how that's going to come out. Like, everybody's on the beatbox, and nobody's singing, or nobody's carrying the melody. So we all have our roles, and, we believe that if we're following our intuition and our proper response, that's going to guide us, divinely guide us to whatever,
as humanity,
whatever in the choir we're supposed to be doing, so that it's balanced, that both the collective and individually we get what we're here to get.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Imagine, I love thinking about this, and you may have heard me say this before, just imagine if everybody followed their guidance, what the world would be if we were all aligned with that. Yes. Yes. It'd be pretty friggin' amazing. And the corollary to that too, I think, is that it's about the choir very much. It's also about personal fulfillment, and I think when we're a soprano singing a soprano part, that's personal fulfillment. For a soprano trying to do the boom, 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 it's not gonna it doesn't work. I used to be a soprano. I don't even know what I am now. I'm not a very good singer.
You are.
I do love dropping videos, singing badly. Anyway.
She doesn't sing badly.
So, yeah. Are you feeling complete on that?
I think I am. Are we ready for the stone?
Do the stone?
I think we're ready for the stone. And the stone for today's video is I am one with Mother Earth. And in a way, it kind of brings it all back. That if you're one with yourself and you're one with Mother Earth, then you're here what you're here to do.
Yeah. So the card that we picked, and I already picked it because I wanted to be able to bring the book out, because this is a new deck that I just recently discovered, the Great Eastern Oracle by Rasuli. That's the cover of the deck, and it's just beautiful. It has all these poets and prophets, quotes from them for each card, and the card that came forward actually is one that came forward for us yesterday too, but it's balance your mind, blow away the burnt harvest. And the quote that comes from this is from Rabia. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And the quote is, "One day Rabia was seen running, carrying fire in one hand and water in the other. They asked her the meaning of the action and where she was going. She replied, 'I am going to light a fire in paradise and pour water on hell, so that both veils disappear and no longer obscure the true vision of God.'" And actually a little choked up from that. It's so beautiful. There's this whole duality in this card, and alignment is about oneness. It's about releasing the duality. It's about releasing the idea of heaven and hell, and just recognizing that the only thing that's real is love, and that there is no good or evil, there is no judgment, there is just love as we focus on that oneness and that alignment.
Absolutely. It's like the yin and the yang. It's about bringing those together in balance, not the one or the other.
Right. It's not that they don't exist. It's just that when we put them together, there's the whole.
Some of the whole.
Some of the whole. All right. We good to bring her home?
We are.
All right. So, I think with a little extra emphasis, my earring keeps getting stuck on my sweater. Extra emphasis on the tenet stone that Peter pulled as we say this, I am one with Mother Earth. And I encourage you to pay attention to what other tenets may really stand out for you today, because that can be something that carries you through the week. You ready?
I'm ready.
I open my heart with deep gratitude and intend today to master my spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical energies. I am dedicated to my spiritual practice. I surrender to my soul's purpose through sacred prayer. I own my guidance. I live in partnership with my angels. I serve with a loving heart. I am compassionate in every moment. I trust it's all good. I allow immediate forgiveness. I honor my truth. I listen to the spiritual messages within my physical body. I express myself creatively. I am one with Mother Earth, and so it is. So much love to each and every one of you. Reverends Jamie and Marianne will be back next week live. You can check them out on the Divine Order of the Sacred Rose Facebook page at 10 a.m. Eastern. Much love from the Rowe household. Be well.